Hey guys, and welcome to Pheas Airsoft, where today I'm going to be doing a how to install this Perun for AUG in this Tokyo Marui Stayer AUG. Hey guys, and welcome back. If you do enjoy this content today, please do consider liking, commenting and subscribing, because those interactions help the channel get seen by the algorithms and help the channel to grow. If you want to visit my socials, my Discord and my merch store, use the Linktree link down below in the description. And if you want to support the channel a little bit extra, there is a join button down below for channel memberships. 99p a month, you get custom videos, bloopers, your own giveaways and that sort of thing. Totally optional, really appreciated if you did do it. So today then, following up from coinciding with the unboxing and review video, this is the how-to video on how to install this Perun into this Stayer AUG. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to strip this down off camera and get the gearbox out, and then we're going to talk through the necessary steps to do this. So I've got the gearbox out now, and it's not the pleasantest thing to do when you have to bang the back of the receiver to get the gearbox out. But the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to look to install the trigger board. So what I need to do, first of all, is I need to take these 4 screws off. I need to be careful with this spring, and I'm going to lift this plate up so I can get the trigger bar out, because we no longer need this trigger bar. Now I am just keeping my thumb on top of here, because I don't want anything to sort of like explode out when the last screw sort of comes out. Lift that out. I can feel that board's going a little bit. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this just to unhook the spring carefully. There we go. And now this should lift up and out. So, God damn it, thought I was filming and I wasn't. Let's go back. So the trigger, what I had to do is remove the selector stroke safety, and I had to remove this back body pin as well. They will just push out. Both of these pins, these things came out this way. They're both on a metal plate. So I've now got this board out. So this trigger assembly here just lifts up. On mine, I believe there was some sort of little peg thing that was retaining this in here, which I now appear to have lost. I bet it's sits in there. I'll find those in a second. They're pinged off. It does say about be careful of these things pinging out, so I will find those in a second. But the trigger bar was just screwed onto there like that. So I just undid the 2 screws, got that out of the way. This can go back into there now, and then we'll reseat the body pins in a second. So I found the little things that had disappeared. So what they are is underneath here. I'll just pull it out to release it. So underneath here you've got these little springs, these little tabs. So they just have a little tiny spring with a little square black thing on the top that just sits in the top there. Compress it down, and there we go. And it just, not entirely sure what it does, but it's seeming to keep things compressed under there, and then obviously it seems to limit the movement partially as well within a certain section. So now that that's back together, we're going to drop that. Helps if we put it back in the correct way. Back in like that, and the screw holes all line up. We've got a bit of movement in there. We can pull that trigger, and that's our clicking mechanism. I'm also going to put the selector back in. So there is a little plate. So the little plate has got a notch in it. The notch, you can see these notches on here. They're going to push it together like that. So what happens is, this plate goes in first, and it's going to have the hooks towards the stock like that. Missed. There we go. There we go. Stop. Okay, so now I'm going to put the safety back in then. I'll kind of jumping around a little bit, it's figuring this out a little bit this time. So I've put the little plate in, it's there, the notch sitting forward, sit against that. The selector is just going to slide in then, like that. Perfect. So then when I put the trigger back in, just drop that back in place. Now we've got safe, it's on the safe setting, click it out, I've got the first stage all the way out, and I've got the full clicky trigger going off, and those little plunger things are causing that. So I'll put it back to safe now. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to reattach this spring. So I'm just going to hook it around the back down there. This has pretty much been the most difficult bit, is just getting all of this sorted, and then after this it's a lot easier. Oops. Tell you what, I could do this a lot quicker in future now I've done it. So just going to hook that's into that. So we've now got a nice springy trigger without any issues. I'm going to bring in the back 2 screws initially, secure those down, and then we're going to bring in the trigger board. Okay, now that's in, we're going to get the trigger board. We are going to need the long cable, is what runs from here to the back, which we'll sort of make use of shortly. So just cut this open. Don't want the control board, we just want, for now, the trigger board. So that's just going to attach on there in those fittings there, using the same screws as we've already had. Now don't worry too much about these boards, because where the screws go through there are no electrical connections at all. It's obviously designed very, very well. There we go. Finding those threads. Right, so at the minute, just test safe. We've still got everything going on. Next thing we need is the trigger block. So a little bag of parts, and in here we've got this little trigger with a magnet on it. I'm just going to drop those out and keep those safe. We'll cover those shortly. So this has a little arrow on it. Now it's important that this sits over and those arrows line up as closely as possible. We then use the attachment screws there to secure this down. Now it does recommend also super gluing this down as well, just to ensure that it doesn't work loose over time. So I'm just going to tighten those down with tiny little, when I can find one, a tiny little Phillips. There we go. And I'm just going to use my thumb to hold that in place as well as possible. Again, don't over tighten it just until they start to bite. Still not biting yet. Still a bit of movement. So what I'm going to do is just tighten them up a little bit. There we go. Now I've actually got a screwdriver that's actually working with it. So I'm keeping this little black arrow here on the trigger board and this arrow on the magnet holder as lined up as possible. I'm just going to carefully line those up and tighten those down. There we go. There we go. There we go. I'm happy with that. So now if I put it off safe, I've got movement. There we go, we've got our trigger movement absolutely perfect, and those arrows are lined up nicely. I am happy with that. So at this stage, what I should do is I should run this from here down, but at the same time what we're going to leave that until a little bit later, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and feed this back through when the gearbox comes in, because there isn't enough cable to leave it attached. Bring that on screen, to leave it attached and then feed the gearbox in. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait until the gearbox is set up and then feed it back through again. So I'm just going to move that out of the way. Now onto the gearbox itself then. So at this point we are literally just going to remove everything that is basically wired, essentially, because we don't need it on here. So just get that out of the way. Elric, when you watch that, this was inside the stock of the AUG. Those of you who don't know what that is a English 2p coin. So we're going to need some Phillips head first to remove that, or help to remove that. We are going to have to enter the gearbox as well. So remove that one, and then we've got a Torx screw here. That is a Torx 10 screw to get rid of this. That can come out. Now we're not going to replace that screw at the minute, because that particular screw is going to get replaced with this screw from the set, and I'll show you about that in a second, because there's something specific about that. What I am going to do is I'm just going to go and warm up my soldering iron, and I'm going to desolder these connections off of here so that we've got basically nice clean contacts. But in the interim, before I go and do that, we're going to open up the rest of the gearbox using the Torx 10. Just remove that clip there, so that we can get inside of here to sort out the rest of this. Move those on the way. Make sure that you're keeping things in the right order, because some of these screws, a lot of these screws, are different sizes, so it's important to keep them in the right sizes, in the right places. Right, so before I pop this, I'm just going to get my flat head ready. Just as I start prying the gearbox open, I'm just going to jimmy that in there to keep the selector, come on Pheas, figure it out. The spring guide down, so that we don't lose the spring and the spring guide. There we go. There it is. I'm going to take that out, which appears to have been installed the wrong way around. So we've then got our gearbox shims are moving. So I'm just going to empty this out, and then we can get the main board in. So first thing I'm going to do is we're just going to lift up the compression system. I'm just going to check everything's good. Yeah, straight away. Yeah, we got the good compression. It's TM, I wouldn't expect any less. There's the nozzle, keep those safe together. And then I'm just going to carefully lift out the gear set, put them to one side 2 minutes. I'm going to lift the trigger out. There we go, and there's a trigger spring. That little shim then, be careful of where shims come from. I noticed that one was off the bottom of that gear there. Keeping those together. And then this board can come out, and its trigger block. What I'm going to do, because I don't want to start snipping wires, I want this effectively to be almost reversible, is I can unscrew this here. Unscrew the one on the side. There we go, and this will literally fall apart now and allow these cables to come out. So I'm going to come back in a couple of seconds once I've desoldered these wires, and we'll continue the rest of the installation. Okay, so I am back then. So we're now getting ready to put the control board in. So the first thing I need to do is I need to remove the cut-off lever, because we no longer need that, because the MOSFET and its active braking is going to take care of everything for us. We also don't need to put the trigger back in as well, which is nice, because the obviously the trigger sensor and the control board on the very front are going to deal with that for us. So I'm just going to lift that out of the way. I will bring that screw back in a second. In fact, I'm going to keep it safe there. So I'm just going to check that it's all clean around there, and it is. Then I'm going to get the control board out of its case, out of its bag. I also forgot to desolder the motor, which I'll go and do in a second. I actually went and had my lunch. So there's our control board, and it's just going to sit in here, and the wiring is all going to go out the side there, which I'll feed through in a minute, and it's just going to screw down exactly where the cut-off lever was a few seconds ago. So I'll just feed this through. I'll show you that again. Pull that wiring loom through. Just going to make sure that there's no excess grease or anything that might get in its way. And then this is just going to sit. There we go. So all the wiring's run through, and that's going to obviously loop back round on itself round to the motor. The control board then is left open for the controllers to click in. So we've got the front one is the trigger board that goes out the front towards the trigger, and the back one is the control board, which is going to obviously connect to a chip that goes on the back there. So I'm just going to secure this down with the screw that we used to we just had a second ago. Now, as part of this placement, what you need to make sure of, which I will do in a second once I've secured this down, is that the sector gear can spin and it can be spotted by the optical sensor. So I'm just being quite careful. There we go. So secure it down. That's pretty good. There we go. So I'm just going to bring the sector gear in. I'm just going to drop that in place, and that is freely moving. And what the idea is, these two sensors here can see the underside of this gear spinning round like that. Absolutely perfect. So I'll drop that back out of the way. So we're done in here. So I'm going to close this back up on camera in a second, but first I'm going to go and desolder this and clear this up, and I'll be back in a moment. So I'm back from the soldering iron then. Remove the motor, the wire terminals. Yours may not have that may just have the normal connectors, and I've just neatened up the solder on the tabs there for the connectors to go on. So now this is done, I'm going to reassemble this and put this back together. It's surprising how much actually you just straight up get rid of out of here that you don't put back in. So anti-reversal latch then. There's the anti-reversal latch. Now the little spring arm is right there. The shortest side goes down like that, and I'm just lightly holding it out of the way. There we go. Drop that in place, and I'm just going to rotate that round until the teeth are out of the way of the piston. Perfect, like that. I'm then going to bring in the compression parts. I'm going to drop those in like that. So I'm just going to hook the spring on at the front there, on that front post. And then I'm just positioning the cylinder and the cylinder head on their correct places, which is fighting me at the minute. Piston can come down there. The cylinder head possibly just needs pushing back out a little bit. There we go, it did. So shims are pinging all over. Right, oh, I've done it again. No. There we go. There we go. We got there in the end. Perfect. Right, so there's my wiring loom coming out. So we've got the chip in, we've got the board secured down, we've got everything put back in, so I'm ready to put the spring in and close this up. So I'm going to use the same thing as I did before. Now this is a non-linear spring, so you've got a tight coil in there and a tight coil at the end. I don't know if it actually makes the blind bit of difference, but I was always told that this grouping, tight grouping at the end, should be on your spring guide, and that the other one should be sort of around the middle there, like that, or just shy of the middle. So get the flathead, put that in, secure that down, bring this top half in, and that is how easy a TM is to put back together. Now at this point then, this particular screw here we are not putting back. We are instead, and I'll show you this, I'm going to use, in the kit you get 3 screws. Now one, hopefully you can see, this one is a slightly different colour to these ones, and it's slightly longer than those two. This is the screw that we're going to put in here. I'm not entirely sure why, but that's what the instructions are telling us to do. All the rest of the screws can all come back in and go back in, so there's just 3 to go back in. So small one at the front, medium one here, make sure you turn it back until it clicks so you know that you're in the threads, and then a longer one at the back. There we go. There we go. So I'm just going to make sure that that's all flush. Perfect. So this screw then is just going to go into here. Hopefully it's Torx 10 will work it. So it is a hex head screw, but the Torx is working for it. There we go, secured down. Right, so next thing before I move any further, just going to clear up these few bits out of the way because we no longer need them. And that. So what we've done is remove the cut off, remove the trigger and the springs associated with those things, and the screw, and we've just mounted the board down. In terms of the board, it's going to detect itself, the movement of everything, the trigger, and that's part of the reason why we need to do the trigger calibration. We've got that in. So the next bit, we're actually ready to sort of get this back into the receiver and run the wires forwards and backwards. We just need to put the motor on as well. So double check. There is an ever so slightly shorter one, which was the front one. So I'll just put those back in as well, and that's a Phillips head. Those are in. Perfect. Next thing I can do is bring these around, and I can put the motor terminals on there. So I'm just going to bring these round. Black terminal is at the back. I'm just going to put the black terminal on there first. Now there is a little bit of residual solder left on there, so I might need to just widen the little connector up a little bit. Yeah, I'm just going to widen that up a little bit. I'm going to do the same with the other one, the red terminal, so I can get that on. How will that one go on? That appears to be going on anyway without any issues. I'm just going to bend it like that so it comes round and it all joins up excuse me, together out the back like that, and this one is going to come round and go on there. So I'm just going to open that connector up, so I've got the red terminal is on the back and comes round to the connector, and they're all coming around this side, and this one's going to come round onto here. I'm just going to loosen that up, back in 1 second. There we go. So got those on, all wired in nicely. I suspect that might need bending slightly just to accommodate, might just need to bend it a little bit more just to accommodate the wiring going sort of out the back. So I'm just going to get those bundled up a little bit together, and those are safe to come out the back. What I am going to do is I'm going to wire in the control board wire and feed that out the back as well. So I'm going to grab that now. So there's our control board wire. So we're just going to look underneath here, so we can see here we've got control board and we've got trigger board. So the little metallic parts that you can see there, they go down, so it's just the solid plastic, and that corresponds with the little connectors in there. Oops. So as you can see there, I just use basically my thumbs just to get enough purchase on it, just to push that in, and that's just going to come over here. What I did forget, or spotted as, is I forgot to bring that in. What we don't want is wires sort of getting too far into there and getting caught. So I'm just going to feed that under that black wire, and I'm going to feed that out the back like that with these. So I've got our new wiring loom now. The last thing I'm going to do before I put it back in the receiver is I'm going to plug in the other control wire to feed forward. So there we've got our other control wire then. So this is the one for the trigger board. So same again, the little metallic contacts there are going to go down like that, and I'm just going to use the same technique again. Just going to get my thumbnails on it, and it should go in fairly easily, and it does. So you can see there, they don't quite sort of go fully all the way in. They're just, there's probably about a millimetre of sort of plastic there left over, and that wire will come forward. It's going to be a tricky thing to feed that down through the receiver and out the front. So get rid of that, get rid of those. Next thing, I'm going to put the top sort of part on the gearbox. Now be careful, because this one is particularly flimsy and it just clicks and locks over the little latch at the back there, and then I can rebuild. It's going to be a pain. The assembly at the for the front here, so that's going to go under there. Bit of a bad design if you ask me, but whatever. Not that I could do any better. And this is the awkward bit now. So feeding this spring back onto here, and that happens. So I'm going to go away and swear in a corner for 2 minutes, and then when I come back I'll have it perfectly lined up. Oh. Yeah, I'll definitely see you in a second. Hooray! There we go. Pheas finally did it. All the wiring's all over the place, but he doesn't care right now because he did it. Right, so now this can go back into the receiver. So I'm just going to keep my finger on that to keep it safe, and that as well. I'm going to bring this in. This is going to be some sort of like jiggery magic thing going off. So this part here slid back. We need the trigger wire to come down that gap there. Wow, this is not going to be fun or easy. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to feed the wire down here and under this holder thing, and I'm hoping, is that in the mag well? Yes. So I've got my finger on it in the mag well, sort of had past tense. Right, boom, there we go. So initially then, all I'm going to do is I'm going to feed it down the mag well, which is probably going to be far easier than any other way of doing this. So just balance that off, just taking that through further, keeping these sort of safe and out of the way a little bit. Right, so just manipulating these wires a little bit just to keep them safe, make sure they're not catching, and then gearbox has gone nose down, that's fine, and it goes. There is no real finesse to this, it is just as awful and awkward as it seems. At the minute the connectors, the motor connectors, are actually catching, so I'm going to take that back out slightly, hoping that those don't come off. You're literally missing nothing. If you're wondering what's actually going off and that you can't see anything, you're literally missing nothing other than me just fighting with this. There we go. Bring that out a little bit. Oh no. Oh. Okay, so back to the drawing board with that in a second. What I am going to do though is I'm going to actually bend that forward like that and then bring it round that way, and that should help keep it out of the way. And that wire I'm going to have to bend out slightly and in and out. So what I've done there is that the red wire just sort of bends round the front here. The black wire was alright, I think, so we should be alright with that. Now I'm going to try and rebuild this. Do you know what? I was going to say this is worse than the P90, and I mean the P90 was a doddle. The reason this is hard is because P90s are not the greatest of designs, and it's just not easy to do. This is definitely not Perun's fault. Perun have done a great job. By comparison, their elements of it are a doddle. Right, there we go. So now I can pull that back through. That can come up there and over there, like that. So let's see if we can get that in now. You could go up there. You need to come around there. It's in. I can confirm it is in, and the wire is there. So the gearbox is in. So in a second I'm going to put the securing plate down. Before I do, I'm just going to figure out the rest of this wiring. So if I lay it down like that, there is some foam there that Elric has put in. I have no idea why. Okay, that should be enough. Right, so I fed it, there is a little gap, and there you can see it coming down towards us. going to come forward. I'm just going to feed it all through initially. Be careful not to knock the dislodge the gearbox. There we go. So what I'm going to do is in here, in the mag well, it just needs to stay sort of down to the side where the trigger bar would have sat before, and that's well out of the way of the mags. I'll just double check that. So the wire in. It is out of the way. What you might need to do is just maybe a little bit of double-sided tape just to keep it pulled down and out of the way. That's absolutely fine without any issues. It's going straight in. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to loop it up and round and onto our trigger board. Again, the metal contacts go down, and I'm just going to use, once I locate it, trying to get it in the wrong side, of course I am. Just use my fingernails to plug it in. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is all the excess wire I'm actually going to feed back down towards the gearbox itself. I've actually fed it the wrong way. Now I don't know if you can see it, but at the minute my wire is sitting on over the top of the upper release. So what I need to do is make sure it comes underneath, not over the top. So I'm just going to change that alignment. I'm just going to disconnect it from the trigger board, and I'm going to go and sort that out now. And I'll be back in a second to show you how it should look. Or I'll just leave it running and we'll just do this. Right, get rid of that foam. Right, so when I'm going in, I'm literally staying as close to this sort of, what is now the top edge there, and there is a track that I can feed my wire up into. There it is. I'm just trying to get hold of it. There we go. I'm just going to collect that, feed the rest of it through. There we go, perfect. Now it's definitely out of the way. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to put this in place, connectors down. There we go. And then there is space down there that if I am careful, I can actually loop this round and leave this tucked down there quite neatly without needing to faff about too much. Or not. No. So I'm just going to go straight for, so position the wire, and at this point what I'm going to try and do now is I'm going to bring the upper back in, get the upper in, and hopefully keep that there like that. Just caught it. There we go. So what I've done is just kept my finger down there as long and as much as possible, just to help guide and keep that wire where it should be. And then that's allowed that to go back in, lock that in, and then I'm just going to feed this wire back into there. Just keep feeding backwards, and what we end up is this protective shroud. Sorry, I apologise, off camera there, I'm leant right over a table. So I'm just feeding this wire back in to the gearbox space, just to sort of take up the slack, and that will leave us, when I've done it, there we go. So that leaves us with our wire where the protective shroud is. Now if you remember, part way down the wire there was like a thicker protective shroud part, and it's just going to be spending a little bit of time just sort of gently coercing the wire into its right position and keeping it there. Now it might be that a little bit of double-sided tape might help, or I was going to say super glue, but it's probably not the best thing to be putting down there. But let's just check the mag goes in. The mag does go in absolutely fine. So release that. So the next thing then is to put the back plate in and to secure the back control board. So I'm going to turn this over. It's got the back plate here. We're not going to need those two screws. Well, we can use those screws, but they've provided us two extra. So if these two screws are not long enough to hold the board down, then we can use those two screws. So I'm just positioning, it's an awkward length now, positioning this board in here, so the bottom goes in first, and there goes the wires, and just checking everything sits where it should sit. So the back plate, I don't know how well you can see it, there we go, is going in. So now I just need to bring the final board in, which I've already got. It's here. So there's our final board. Now if these screws are not long enough to secure this down and the back plate, then we can switch to use those two screws if we need to, because they are obviously significantly longer length. I think there might be enough room on there to get it in. So what I've done is, I don't know how well you can see in there, I have, and I will put a photo in, I'll take a photo afterwards to show. In fact, can I do that? There we go. So I've got the board in, I'm just going to line it up with the two screw holes that are in there. I'm going to screw it down, so bear with me 2 seconds. So bring this back in. Luckily for me, they were both long enough and I've got the board in. So I'm just going to plug the little white connector into the board. Again, metal contacts down. Probably going to have to use my fingernails to help that go in. So that's now plugged in, so we are ready for a battery and the moment of truth. Here we go. So I'm going to start with it at 7.4. How did that actually? Right, let's try that again. Okay, so we had the green light on and beeped, so now we're going to go for the trigger setup. So you need to make sure that it's on semi-auto initially. So there's our beeping, say it's on. So we're going to press once, twice, and then we're going to cycle through the firing mode. So that's firing modes. Then we're in white and green is burst count, then it's AB level is blue, yellow is pre-cocking, trigger sensitivity stage 1, trigger sensitivity stage 2, rate of fire reduction, LiPo alarm, DSG mode, trigger calibration is what we want. So we need to have it on a fire mode, so we pull the trigger to start it off. So we put it to safe, we hold the trigger in as far as we can, and we press the button, detects that. We then put it to first stage, so pull the trigger, click the button, this is for first stage, and then put it to second stage and push the button again. And that's it. And now, ooh, we've got it fully working. So that is the full install. I'm going to be honest, the review will say it's a work of art what Perun have built there, and I can't wait to do the rest of the review with the rate of fire comparison. The only really tricky part here is what's made by the AUG. The AUG itself makes it tricky in terms of running the cable. Is a little bit fiddly, and messing with the trigger is a little bit fiddly. But other than that, it has actually been pretty easy to do. Possibly not even as it's more tricky because of the wires, I think, and the AUG makes it tricky. But it's not bad at all. So we get rid of quite a few bits out there, the whole trigger block and everything like that, and we've got so many options now with it. So I hope you found that useful. Please do remember to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.